Now. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Welcome on. Let's
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Media Group. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, here to break down all things Dodgers. We appreciate everybody joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We greatly appreciate you. Matt, happy Sunday evening to you. We are in the thick of MLB offseason, and by that I mean it's been a little slow around here. So how are you holding up?
Yeah, I'm good. You hit the nail on the head there. Kind of a lot of sitting and waiting around today, yesterday, the day before. We got at least some activity at the start of the winter meeting, so that was fun. And now, obviously Teoscar Hernandez is sort of the big domino out there for the Dodgers. We're going to get into him. But yeah, it's a lot of waiting on Teoscar at this point.
I posted this on social media. I'll say it here because I know I've got a receptive audience. I dipped my toes into the Lakers Nation world the other day, and the Lakers are playing better as we speak right now. But, man, watching the Lakers play and the drama around LeBron and all that, Matt, I was like, look, I like the Lakers. I'm a Lakers fan. Okay, so I'm not throwing stones from the outside. It just makes me appreciate, Matt, being a Dodgers fan, having a team that won the World Series last year, has an incredibly bright present, an incredibly bright future, 2 World Series in the last 4 or 5 years to celebrate as well. Being around the Lakers just makes me appreciate the Dodgers even more.
Yeah, certainly you can get a little bit of perspective there. The Lakers are winning. I know we were talking about that before we started this, but then right as we started the stream, Anthony Davis was down on the court and then taken to the bench, I think holding his left shoulder or something. So we'll have to see. Daniel's saying he's rubbing his left shoulder, but looks to be okay. So maybe things will be fine. Maybe just a stinger or something. But yeah, it's been tough sledding for us on our sister site, obviously Lakers Nation. Trevor, Daniel, and everybody kind of knows the whole crew. Ryan, Matt Peralta. We have about 4 or 5 different Matts and or Matthews on our staff. So yeah. Peralta's over there. But yeah, I mean, I agree with it. It's easy to get kind of swept up in some frustration maybe with the Dodgers as things are going on and we're living kind of the day to day. But I mean, honestly, since they've won the World Series, I don't really see any reason to complain between that point in late October was it, or did it get to November when they finally won?
October 30th.
There we go. End of October to now. No real reason to complain. And I know that Teoscar Hernandez situation, like I just alluded to, is hanging out there. And certainly, if it goes one way instead of the other, then there will be a lot of fans that are upset. But for now, I think it's enjoying the offseason, enjoying the holidays, and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, my Raiders didn't lose today. They'll lose tomorrow, so we've got that going for us. And losses are basically wins if you're the Raiders at this point. So we appreciate it. All right, well, let's get into it. We are going to talk Teoscar Hernandez. We're going to have some fun with a couple of the baseballs that have gone up for auction over the last couple of weeks. But let's start with the real news, Matt. The Dodgers have made a move. David Bote, minor league contract. Bote, if you are unfamiliar, how could you possibly be unfamiliar with the one and the only David Bote? 421 career games at the major league level. 37 of those were in 2024. He has a 711 OPS over parts of 6 big league seasons, all with the Cubs. He comes over to the Dodgers on a minor league deal. Emphasize minor league deal here with David Bote. This is a utility guy. This is sort of the classic profile that the Dodgers get. To me, Matt, this is reminiscent of, and this guy, I believe, came over via trade, but Andre Lipsius is sort of this type of guy. Like the Dodgers organizationally are able to acquire depth when they add players like Bote, who has been at the major league level, has not been terrible. I mean, a 711 OPS is not awesome, but it's not terrible either. And so there's nobody's getting super fired up, excited about this, but he's not on the 40-man roster. And, assuming he doesn't break camp with the big league team, he could be spending some time down in Oklahoma City and be available if and when the Dodgers need him.
Yeah, the fact that he was available surprised me from the standpoint of I remember him signing kind of an early extension after his debut season. It's been kind of unfortunately downhill for him since then. I think he wasn't in the majors in 2023 at all. Like you said, minor league signing, and especially being off a 40-man roster, that certainly benefits the Dodgers because they're going to have, I think, probably a little bit of a crunch here again, as we saw kind of towards the end of 2024. yeah, ton of versatility, can play multiple positions, can play the corner outfield spots. So, dare I say, if the Dodgers don't re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, they have a David Bote, Michael Conforto platoon out there in the outfield, and I'll wait to see the chat get really upset at that. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's interesting. And hey, he even pitched one game this year, which the Dodgers certainly, we've seen Hanser Alberto do it, we've seen Kike Hernandez do it. So, like, I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but that does have value to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I shared this a little bit. I'm not familiar with him, especially, but one of the places I go is I like to go to Baseball Savant and say, like, what are the things that maybe the Dodgers are seeing either as a positive that they can build off of or a negative that they might feel like, hey, if we can just bring this number a little bit closer to the median, then maybe we've got a player who has some real value. Because again, don't forget, I mean, Max Muncy, Justin Turner. I'm not saying David Bote's going to be the next, but as a Dodgers fan, it's also worth pointing out that sometimes these guys actually go on and become real difference makers. Not all the time. There's plenty of times it's failed and you never hear about this guy ever again. But the thing about Bote that jumped out, two things, positive and negative. I'll start with the negative. The whiff rate and strikeout rate are really, really bad at the major league level. 33.3% whiff rate. So 1 out of every 3 times he swings the bat, he swings and misses. And 27% of the time he goes to the plate, he strikes out. Those numbers, not good. Some of the worst in Major League Baseball had he qualified. What's interesting, though, on the offensive side, this guy swings the hell out of the bat. And I don't literally mean he makes contact. I just mean he swings really, really hard. He has high-end bat speed, which has led to, from an exit velocity perspective, he's had a couple years with positive average exit velocities, but his max exit velocities have been pretty impressive. So I'm wondering if that's what the Dodgers are looking at, and they just see some potential in that bat of, okay, he makes loud contact when he does make contact. Can we help him some way or another to just make more of it? Or maybe it's tone down on how hard you're swinging in order to make more contact. I don't know. Again, this guy could never be heard from again, but here we are in the middle of December. The Dodgers signed somebody, David Bote, to a minor league deal. And so at least to me, Matt, you've got a guy who's defensively versatile. You mentioned all the positions he can play. And at least there's something on the Savant page or the Fangraphs page or whatever that you can point to and say, well, like there's that at least.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned Andre Lipsius, who's obviously was with OKC this year, and I saw Jonathan Montgomery saying Sheldon Noisy. That's another good comp if you want to go a little bit further back. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's important to remember that, yes, Andrew Friedman, Brandon Gomes, the Dodgers are certainly focused on the Major League roster and putting together that team. They also have minor league affiliates that they need to address and particularly Oklahoma City, which I know Scott is saying Bote will just be in camp and then, either released or traded perhaps, and or he ends up being organizational depth for the team down at OKC and is somebody that maybe they call up at a certain point. Again, like there's no risk to this. And I saw, let me see who said it. Common sense. So there's no other Dodgers news. I will pull back the curtain for everybody and say that the fact that there is very little Dodgers news right now is a role in us discussing David Bote to lead off this show.
Totally. And some of these guys, to Scott's point, some of these guys signed contracts where I'm trying to remember, there was a third baseman who came up. He had played around the major leagues. I'm blanking on his name. He came up.
It was Daniel's guy. Yeah, it was it Brad Miller?
No, it wasn't Brad. He was there. He was a shortstop. There was a third baseman who actually came up and then he got traded to the Mariners. Somebody in the chat will remind me who I'm talking about. But there are guys like that who they have built into their contracts like, hey, if I'm not up at the major league level by this date, then I can opt out, or I have another opt out on this date or whatever. Man, somebody in the chat's got to help me out. I can't figure out this guy's name for to save my life. But but my point is, I don't actually, I would guess that Bote is not good enough to have gotten that, is my guess. So I'm not sure, a guy who played 0 major league games in 2023 and who played 37 in 2024 on a Cubs team that wasn't all Jake Lamb. Thank you very much. It was Jake Lamb. Great pull, Javier. But yes, Jake Lamb was good at one point. Like David Bote, not necessarily. There you go. Blake says Rake Lamb. I don't know if he's good enough to have those built-in opt-outs. If he does, I'm not sure, how early they may or may not be, but these are the types of things we'll figure out. So there you go. Everybody got Jake Lamb now, but that's the guy I was thinking of. Jake Lamb had a couple years of like real major league production. Bote, we'll see. Remains to be seen. So again, he's the newest Dodger, but it's a minor league deal. And to be fair, he might not ever be a Dodger outside of spring training. Let's get to the guy, Matt, that everybody is talking about. That is Teoscar Hernandez. And when I say everybody's talking about him, I wish we had more of an update. I wish we had news, but we do have this. Dave Roberts did a interview with the Bleed Loves podcast and was quoted as saying, "I think we are close." Now, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here to everybody in the chat. We all want to believe Dave when he says, "I think we're close." But I would also ask you, wherever you are watching from or listening from, raise your hand if Dave has ever said something that wasn't entirely true, maybe because he wanted it to be true, or maybe because he wasn't thinking before he said it, and it turned out to not be true. I'm guessing when Dave says, "I think we are close," and I read the context clues around when he said that, I'm not convinced he's actually saying something he knows. And more so, because he goes right on saying, "Everybody say your prayers" right afterwards. So it feels like him trying to will this into existence, Matt, maybe more so than actually give a real update.
Yeah, I agree. He was making a public appearance where they caught up with him. So I don't think he's giving away any organizational insight, front office insight, really. So yeah, I mean, what's your here? Yes, I agree with you on what Dave Roberts said, and unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of concrete information on that. And before I kind of share what I think, like, what's your read on the situation at this point?
I think I stand by the fact that I think Teoscar Hernandez is going to be a Dodger in 2025. I still think the Dodgers make the most sense. I still think the Dodgers want him back. I still think Teoscar wants to be here. I think we can get impatient because we just assume that every day that goes by, those things are less and less true. But maybe those things become more and more likely as time goes on because other teams have signed or acquired outfielders, etc. So my opinion has not changed. I understand the anxiety of it having not happened yet, but that doesn't lead me to believe it's less likely to happen today than when it was. I think what happened is that Teoscar Hernandez went to the market with ideas of what he was going to get, and he was hopeful that once Juan Soto came off of the market, that maybe some of his demands would become more appealing or appetizing to some of those teams. My guess, pure speculation, is that it hasn't. And so he is now waiting. He's negotiating. He's going to see if maybe Santander signs first. Maybe that will change some things. But I still stand by, Matt, that ultimately I think he's going to be a Dodger.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know on multiple live shows that we've done, you and I, whether it was Sunday nights or if I was on with you and maybe somebody else at a different point, I did think that Soto going to the Mets was sort of a worst case scenario for the Dodgers from the standpoint of the Red Sox and the Yankees, and Blue Jays were in on Soto, and then had also been mentioned as those meetings and stuff were going along that Teoscar Hernandez was a fallback option to them. So I thought one of those three teams was going to quickly pivot and say, okay, like not give him like crazy money, but maybe do like, oh, Soto went for that much. This is the guy now we really want. We can't afford to miss out on on Soto and Teoscar. Like, let's just up our contract a little bit, get it done. That hasn't happened. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean that it won't happen. But I'm inclined to believe at this point that whatever, maybe Teoscar Hernandez's agent thought was potentially going to be out there, whatever maybe they hoped would be out there, isn't necessarily out there at this point. Yeah. And I think my belief is the Dodgers, Andrew Friedman is shrewd in his own right. Yeah. I think they recognize that, and I think they're sticking to that whatever their terms are, like more or less this is the best we'll do. And it's I agree with you. It is on Teoscar Hernandez at that point. So yeah, I mean, I do think we probably will get a resolution soon. I mean, the Blue Jays were, I think, recently mentioned as wanting Santander a little bit more than perhaps Teoscar Hernandez. So that if they come off the market, then that's one fewer team, right? Unless I know Bleacher Report put out something the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, that whole thread was, I text you guys saying like, I thought it was like satire, like just throwing out random predictions and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I still think that the odds are more likely than not that Teoscar is back. I think maybe the delay is more so in his camp. I don't want to say they overplayed their hand, but maybe thought that there was going to be a little bit more of a lucrative deal. Because look, teams are spending this offseason, right? Like the focus has been on starting pitchers for the most part, but there is money to go around. Even the the Sacramento A's are getting aggressive, if you will. So I think maybe that's kind of, it's a little bit of a staring contest at this point.
Yeah, and I've said this, and Blake has said it more forcefully than I have, but I think we have to remember the piece that I've said is we have to remember that sometimes as Dodgers fans, I think because we have become so familiar with a player, either positively or negatively, that we tend to overrate or underrate our own players based on our own biases. And so everybody that loves Teoscar the person and saw how valuable he was to the Dodgers, I think there's this overarching belief that oh my gosh, surely every team in the league desperately wants Teoscar Hernandez as badly as we do, especially if they need a corner outfielder. When the reality is these other teams are also doing their due diligence and saying, okay, where's he going to play in the field? How poor is he going to be out there? How many years can we have him out there for? Can we trust a 1-year bounce back offensively compared to where he was a year and a half ago outside of Los Angeles, outside of a lineup with Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman and Will Smith and Max? All these factors that I think other teams might be looking and saying, we might not be as eager to sign him as everybody else thinks we are. And so, again, Andrew Friedman has a track record of nailing the process. And so trusting him to know what the number is, to know what the market is for a guy like Teoscar, I think is fair. Now, what Blake has said way more strongly than me is Blake isn't a huge fan of Teoscar Hernandez and how well the contract will age and whether or not he would be willing to give him, more than a 2-year deal. And so I think that's the piece where I just keep coming back to, it's possible everybody else is saying the same thing to Teoscar's agent, which is 2 years, maybe a 3rd year, but that's it. And that he's, to your point, having overplayed his hand and trying to figure out what the next step is. I just think that's possible, that even though there is a scarcity, maybe some other teams are saying just because there's a scarcity doesn't necessarily mean we want to pay $100 million for Teoscar Hernandez. We got a super chat from David. He said, please give me an honest percentage of the odds the Dodgers are signing Teo. I'm stressing out over here. I think the Dodgers, if I was placing the Dodgers versus everybody else, I would still say it's favoring the Dodgers. I would put it at 55% he's a Dodger. So it's not an overwhelming majority, but that's 55 on the Dodgers, and then you can divvy up the other 45% among the Orioles or the Red Sox or the Blue Jays or the Yankees or whoever. So I'm going to go 55% he's a Dodger.
I'm going to flip it. I think it's 45% that he's a Dodger,
okay,
just because all you math nerds have always told me to take the field in scenarios like this. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, if David puts a couple plates of that ravioli that he had tonight in front of Teoscar and his agent, and says, hey, sign with the Dodgers and you can get more of this, then that might sway it back heavily into their favor at that point. So David, no pressure, but you might have to get onto that.
I agree. Although don't tell him that I think David's coming at us from New York, so we can't tell him that ravioli exists outside of the Los Angeles market. So there you go. But yeah, I still think the Dodgers are the favorite to sign Teoscar Hernandez. I think they have the same concerns that everybody else does, but they also have the benefit of a few things. One is the qualifying offer is working in the Dodgers' favor, because all these other teams not only would have to pay Teoscar more than the Dodgers, but they'd also have to sacrifice a draft pick. The Dodgers would gain a draft pick if he were to sign elsewhere. So the Dodgers have that working in their favor. He wants to be here. That's working in the Dodgers' favor as well. And I think, from the Dodgers internally, they would say he's a known commodity in Los Angeles, and there's value in, we know how he fits in the clubhouse. We know how to manage him defensively. And so by all accounts, they want him back. Dave Roberts quotes at least confirm that Dave desperately wants him back. Whether or not he gets what he wants remains to be seen. So let's get to a couple of these super chats here before we move on. Back to the third baseman. Stockton says, I thought you meant Mike Sharperson. So there you go. He's also got thoughts on the drones. He thinks the drones are looking for a lost nuclear warhead. So that's above our pay grade, but we appreciate the super chat. Jonathan says, Bote is a righty. Don't we need a left-handed hitting bench bat? I would not interpret Bote signing as related to the major league roster in any way, shape, or form. So whether they need a left-handed bench bat or not, I think Bote is organizational depth and nothing more than that, unless they can come up with a miraculous fix to his whiff rate and strikeout rate in spring training. But I wouldn't wait on that. Kerr says, do you think Walker Buehler will wait for Roki Sasaki to sign? This is an interesting question. I'm curious what you think, Matt, because I do see, from a team perspective, you wouldn't wait on Walker Buehler to see where Sasaki signs, because the money is basically nothing to sign Sasaki. But for Buehler, you probably would be curious to see is this guy going to be in the same rotation competing for innings in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think if you're Bueller and you don't necessarily get the contract that you might really want or are sort of looking for, then sure, you keep dragging it out and you wait to see where things land. I mean, we were discussing before we started kind of, and we're going to get into Jack Flaherty, like kind of the pecking order still of pitchers to go. And I mean, look, I guess, and Kurt, to kind of cheat in answering your question, there's a world in which maybe Sasaki makes his decision January 3rd, call it, but it's not necessarily, he won't sign until the 15th. But if it does come out, like if his agency decides to reveal it, or if it's just leaked by somebody like, oh, he's going to end up signing with so-and-so, then that gives Bueller, maybe the insight, and he's not technically needing to wait for Sasaki to actually sign. Whereas, so I think semantics, and again, I'm threading the needle here and kind of, punching holes in it for no real reason other than I think that technically, I think we could get Bueller's decision before Sasaki is actually signed. I don't think Buehler makes that decision before Sasaki makes his decision, though. I did feel like there was some good momentum with starting pitchers and them coming off the market. I thought Flaherty would have had a little bit more traction with him, other than kind of, the different teams being connected to him so far. We're heading into somewhat of a tricky period. Not that the MLB front office is completely shut down, but it is the holidays. It is going to be the new year. I think some teams try to take a little bit of an opportunity to decompress during, these final 10 days or so. So, we might be looking at next year before Buehler signs with a team, whether it's the Dodgers or otherwise.
Yeah. And I would have to, somebody way smarter than me would know the answer. Technically, December 15th to January 15th is a dead period in the international free agency period. I felt like I heard at some point that technically teams are not supposed to be negotiating with Roki Sasaki during this period.
I thought it was the other way. I thought you could meet with them. You just can't sign anything.
Okay. Got it. So that's a piece of it. So I think if that's the case, then the point you make is we very well might know where Sasaki's going to sign prior to January 15th. I think it's a fair question, and I think it's possible that Walker Buehler waits. Let's talk. Jack Flaherty was on our to-do list, so let's talk this, because I think these two are related. I know Blake in the chat saying he's surprised that Walker Buehler hasn't signed. Ken Rosenthal reporting this week that the Orioles could be viewing Jack Flaherty as a backup option if Corbin Burns goes elsewhere. Red Sox also linked to Jack Flaherty. And when Rosenthal says that kind of makes a ton of sense to me. And obviously Rosenthal, he wouldn't say it if there wasn't something to it. But it makes sense to me because when I think about Jack Flaherty, once the top three guys, and I'm talking Snell, Fried, and Burns, are off the table, it's sort of Jack Flaherty, not in that tier, but the next tier. And especially at this point, he's kind of in that next tier all by himself. And so if I'm Jack Flaherty, I'm absolutely going to wait until after Corbin Burns signs, because starting pitching, unlike corner outfielders, these guys do not grow on trees. And so whatever you think the warts are that Jack Flaherty comes with, when you look around and realize that he's dramatically better than, whoever your current number 8 starting pitcher is in your organization, I think there could be a run that could run a little bit of his dollar amount could go up. And in a trickle down effect, I could see the same thing for Walker Buehler, that once Jack Flaherty signs, now Walker Buehler's kind of in that next tier, and he might have some more competition depending on what flavor of starting pitcher you're looking for, risk profile, etc. But I just think there's a domino effect with Corbin Burns and then Jack Flaherty and then Walker Buehler. I could see those three kind of signing in succession, would just be a guess.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, you probably throw in Sean Manaea either right before or right after Flaherty. I think definitely before Buehler. But I mean, look, sometimes you get I think we've seen it with the Dodgers. They identified that they targeted Blake Snell early on in free agency, and they went about, jumping the market, if you will, and getting that deal done. And we've discussed, as the other additional starting pitching contracts have come out, Blake Snell's has looked like more of a bargain than it sort of did. At the time, it was okay, that's a good deal for both sides. Blake Snell's getting paid, long-term deal. The Dodgers aren't overpaying necessarily too much. And, you could see it kind of working for both parties, and even more so since then. So logically, I think, yes, Burns will come off the market, and then the Flahertys and Sean Manaea, and then maybe Walker Buehler. But would it fully shock me if, one team were to just say, hey, Buehler, here's the contract you're looking for. It's been reported that he wants I think a 3-year deal with maybe some opt-outs after each season.
Yeah.
Flaherty's case specifically, I think, is a little bit more interesting because, yeah, it probably makes the most sense for him to wait for Corbin Burns to go and then to be left with, okay, all these other teams have missed out on starting pitching now. And like you said, kind of going down the list of the options, then, what's going to happen? Like his market could suddenly increase a little bit.
Yeah. And to be clear, both of us, I think, are saying we do not expect Jack Flaherty to be back with the Dodgers. Like, I think on the starting pitching market, it's Roki Sasaki and or Walker Buehler. And outside of those two, I would be surprised if the Dodgers were swimming in the market of any guy that's making real money this upcoming year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think at this point on the pitching front, in terms of free agents, it's Sasaki and or Buehler, or maybe a trade type thing. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw is an exception to that. And one thing I was going to circle back to that Blake is bringing up in the chat is, waiting that with Flaherty, like maybe he is waiting for Burns, maybe Buehler is waiting for other people. But I thought Teoscar Hernandez was going to benefit from Juan Soto, and we've seen maybe he did overplay his hand. So that's why, like he says, Blake is saying sometimes you have to take the contract. That's where I think that would be more likely with,
though.
Perhaps. And I think it would be more likely though with Buehler than with Flaherty. Whereas with Flaherty, like, yes,
right,
it would make sense, I think, for Flaherty to potentially at least let Burns sign somewhere.
Right.
Because then you're going to have, maybe some other contenders who need I don't know what you want, a quality starting pitcher in Flaherty. With Buehler, the longer you wait, like, you do run the risk of, has money dried up because these teams spent on all these other guys, and now you're not necessarily getting the deal. So it is, I think, unique in some to each player, specific to each player. I agree with you in some sense. Also, being a starting pitcher compared to a corner outfielder is also a difference. But I mean, hey, that's the beauty of free agency, right? It gives us stuff to talk about and debate, and that's where it gets kind of interesting.
Totally. Yeah, I just think that you can find a corner outfielder that you would tolerate far better than, like, I mean, again, as Dodgers fans, we probably don't have perspective because when the Dodgers go and they have to rely on a Landon Knack or a Ben Kasparius or Justin Robleski, it's not like the end of the world. But most teams, like, when they go down to the well, they're not finding Landon Knack at the bottom of that well. They're finding somebody else. And so I think there's more desperation. But I think the point of Buehler, like, people who are looking for Corbin Burns are not going to settle for Walker Buehler. That's two different ponds that you're swimming in. And so we'll see how things develop. Again, I still am hopeful. I wouldn't say optimistic. I am hopeful that Walker Buehler comes back. But I just have no read on kind of what his market looks like, how eager he is to come back the further we get removed from the World Series and all the positive vibes, that kind of a thing. So remains to be seen. Let's get to a couple of these super chats here. Steven says, how much influence does Ohtani have on Teo's signing decisions, given that it's his money that he is deferring? It's a totally fair question. I don't think Teo is not the general manager. Andrew Friedman's in charge. Ohtani, I think they've already proven to Ohtani that by deferring money, you can trust us to sign the guys that we use that money to go for. I just refuse to believe either that A, Ohtani even wants to be in the conversations about how money is spent, or B, that he would be allowed even if he wanted to.
Well, I think if he wanted to, I think the Dodgers front office would at least do him the honor of listening. Whether they would take his advice to heart, I think that's another thing. But I think they would at least
hear
sit down
him.
with
Whether
him.
they would listen remains to be seen.
There you go. That's better said. In terms of, Steven, I'm not sure if you're asking, will Ohtani, maybe get involved, right? Like reach out to Teoscar type thing. That I don't think so. I think, he's going to let it kind of unfold how it is. And Jeff, to your point, Andrew Friedman has said that with Ohtani structuring his contract the way that he did, the Dodgers do take their promise to him of, putting together a competitive team very seriously. Now, if that doesn't necessarily mean, Teoscar Hernandez, you go to 4 years for him type thing, right? Or else, like, Ohtani's not giving them ultimatums. And I think he's trusting the front office. If they don't re-sign Teoscar Hernandez for whatever reason, that the Dodgers are still going to put together a team that's capable of winning the World Series. So that's where the influence is, trying to put together the best team, not necessarily Teoscar Hernandez specifically or any other player that you might want to name.
Yeah, and to your point, a lot of these guys try and respect their peers by not trying to pressure them into signing somewhere, that kind of thing. And yet at the same time, like if the Dodgers were to call Shohei Ohtani and say, send a group text out to a few of the guys and say, hey, we're making a push on Teoscar Hernandez, like, reach out to him, let him know that you'd love for him to be there, let him know, whatever. We've seen that type of thing happen in sports. So I could see something like that, but they tend to let, hey, I want Teoscar to make the decision that's best for him, best for his family, and not feel like, oh shoot, I'm going to let Shohei down if we don't end up bringing him back. Obviously, everybody on the Dodgers, including the front office and management, wants Teoscar back, and I would imagine clearly Shohei Ohtani a part of that group as well. Scarecrow06 with a different super chat. He says, appreciate all the hard work. I'm a new baseball fan, so could you help me understand why it's good for Lux that Mookie does well at shortstop? This might be in relation to a super chat that we answered maybe on Tuesday or Sunday or something like that. But the gist of it was it's good for Lux if Mookie does well at shortstop, because if Mookie can't play shortstop, then Mookie Betts is going to be the Dodgers' second baseman, most likely, which is the only position it appears they trust Gavin Lux to play. And so the joke is, if Mookie plays well defensively at shortstop and proves that he can handle it, great news for Gavin Lux. He gets to stick around and be the second baseman. If for some reason the defense fails and Mookie Betts continues to struggle like he did in the past, then there's kind of only, I suppose he could go back to the outfield, but most likely he'll end up at second base, which means less at bats for Gavin Lux. Obviously, having a good defender next to you also helps, but that was mostly the gist of the conversation, if it's the one I'm remembering, Matt.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. And even if this was a general question asking, why that sentiment is out there that it's good for Lux that Mookie Betts is playing shortstop, you certainly outlined everything there. And I think, is this going to segue us into the Gavin Lux discussion?
It is. Let's have a conversation. There were some rumors that popped up after Devin Williams was traded to the Yankees, and a couple reports came out. One of them was sourced by our own Blake Williams, discussing the fact that Gavin Lux was at least mentioned in a framework as part of a Devin Williams trade. The Brewers were specifically looking for middle infield help with the departure of Willy Adames. They ended up going and getting a prospect, second base prospect from the Yankees, who's expected to be in the mix at least in 2025, if not by opening day. I'm curious your reaction to hearing this. Was it surprise? Do you believe these reports? Or I shouldn't say, do you believe them? Like, they're to be believed, but what do you make of them? How do you interpret the language that was used in these reports?
I'm not surprised from the standpoint of, I think the Dodgers trading Lux at some point, like that sort of feels somewhat inevitable. I've always told you, like, I don't necessarily see his long-term fit on this roster if Mookie Betts is going to be playing infield. And I know that he's playing shortstop in 2025. I think that that's a 1 year, maybe 2 year type thing. I can't imagine Mookie sticking at shortstop permanently. We could go. I know I forgot who brought it up in one of the last live videos we did, but it was called. It was referencing Dave Roberts' "permanent for now" quote of Mookie playing the infield. So doesn't surprise me from that standpoint. It does surprise me from the stance of, okay, well, if you were to trade Gavin Lux, the Dodgers have said, like, they've Friedman, Brandon Gomes has spent the past couple months past few weeks saying Mookie Betts has been working out at shortstop this offseason, getting ready for this season. So all of a sudden you would be changing things again, which now this is still a better scenario than the Dodgers doing it, less than 2 weeks before the start of the 2024 season when they flipped them. But that's where the surprise is okay, like if you do that, then you move Mookie to second base. I guess Tommy Edman becomes your shortstop, which is fine. But then is Andy Pages now playing every day in center field? Is he ready for that type of, like, it would lead to other questions that I think the Dodgers maybe don't necessarily want to have to fill right now. Whereas right now with their roster, like, you just have like one hole instead of maybe two or three to figure out. So that's where kind of the surprise was. But Gavin Lux going home to Wisconsin, like, that's always, I felt like that's been a narrative more so than a story, but something that has been out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a few reactions I had. The first is, and look, everybody knows how I feel about Gavin Lux. So when you accuse me of being biased in how I interpret this report, you're more than welcome to. None of the reports came out and said the Dodgers offered Gavin Lux as part of a package for Devin Williams. Gavin Lux being discussed as part of a Devin Williams trade could mean a billion different things. Like, did the Brewers call and say, hey, can we have Gavin Lux and Hunter Fiducia for Devin Williams? What do you think? And maybe the Dodgers said, we're interested if it's Devin Williams and ... right? Like, that's a possible outcome and interpretation. And the reason I say that is, one, Gavin Lux, you can dislike Gavin Lux as much as you want. He's a more valuable player than the guy that the Brewers actually got, especially if you read some of the prospect reporters on a guy who's never come up, but who's kind of a speed first guy. He's basically D. Gordon, sounds like the profile. Like, it's speed, it's not a lot of power, bat to ball skills, question marks, etc. Also, the reports have come out that Nestor Cortez was kind of the main piece that the Brewers wanted back in that trade. And so Gavin Lux, how he fits into a package if they were going to also want some sort of starting pitcher, remains to be seen. But I just keep saying it, and it's not just me. I'm listening to Fabian Ardaya come on our show and say, hey, everybody, like, the Dodgers have consistently told you what they think about Gavin Lux. And it's that they tried to have him be the shortstop because they believed in him. And then when he was the second baseman and he was hitting terribly, what did they do? They kept giving him chances and they kept giving him chances. And then ultimately they rewarded him. And so we can sit here and we can keep bringing up this idea that they're going to definitely move Gavin Lux, and how you interpret that is going to sort of be the filter that you listen to this through. But that's just the nature of, like, what the Dodgers have done, what history has told us. I see Scott laughing about Nestor Cortez, but like, in 4 months, when they flip Nestor Cortez for like a top 100 prospect because he's a decent starting pitcher that has put up consistent numbers in a league that like overvalues starting pitching, like, he's a valuable player for a 1-year rental on a reliever in Devin Williams.
Yeah, I think the trade made sense. I would have been shocked. Like, after seeing what the Brewers got from the Yankees, I don't know how the Dodgers like would have gone about that. I do think that they are going to have a surplus of starters, but until Roki Sasaki's situation unfolds, until Walker Buehler, and even as remote, as unlikely as the scenario is, Jack Flaherty, like, until those guys sign, maybe the Dodgers kind of get a better sense of what they might have with Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, that type of thing. Like, I don't see how they would have really lined up with the Brewers on that type of trade, unless, like you said, if it was more position player based rather than a pitcher. But yeah, I mean, I think Milwaukee and the Yankees, it certainly made sense for both of them to go that route. On top of, like I said, I think the Gavin Lux piece of it solves maybe a long-term issue for the Dodgers, but it creates kind of an immediate question or two for them as well.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I think that's the fair point. Like, regardless of what you think about Gavin Lux, clearly the Dodgers are built planning for him to be the second baseman in 2025, at least as it currently stands. And so, like, if the Dodgers, Matt, let me ask you this, and I'm curious for the chat and the people that are joining us on Twitter and YouTube. Like, if the trade had been Gavin Lux and Hunter Fiducia for Devin Williams, what would your reaction to that trade have been?
Dodgers probably got a steal.
Oh, you think that would have been a great deal for the Dodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see where Fiducia is going to. I mean, I guess if
Fiducia, yeah. I mean, Fiducia to the side. To me, like, to me, and again, I'm biased. I've joked about wanting to do a segment where we put all of our biases on the table. Like, Gavin Lux, multiple years of Gavin Lux compared to 1 year of a relief pitcher in Devin Williams. That's the piece to me that, like, Devin Williams, the player, is a more valuable player than Gavin Lux. You want to make that argument? Sure. But we're talking about 3 or 4 years of Gavin Lux versus 1 year of Devin Williams.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously no certainties. My assumption would be that if they make that trade, that there's an interest in signing Williams to either an extension, or even, like, if he says, no, I want to play the season out, then my guess is the Dodgers might be pretty aggressive in trying to re-sign him. But again, I don't necessarily see. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm not seeing how Gavin Lux fits on the Dodgers roster long term. And so if they could get some upside impact right now, then it wouldn't fully surprise me from that standpoint. And I think if it ended up being Devin Williams, like, that would be a pretty good trade for the Dodgers.
Yeah. So Gavin Lux, by the way, a free agent in 2027. So 25 and 26. and then a free agent in 2027. So there you go. Yeah. And look, I see Blake, I see Scott disagreeing with me. That's the beauty of this, is we can all disagree on this. And where Gavin Lux is and where he's going to be in 6 months probably informs whether or not how we feel about these trades. And so let's get to a couple super chats here. JDS Third says, technically Roki can sign now. He agreed to wait until January 15th at MLB's request. This allows all teams to have opportunity, illusion of fairness. So technically December 15th to January 15th is a dead period. So to use your language, technically he can't sign now. But as Matt pointed out, he could, in theory, agree to a deal that then gets signed starting on January 15th. Once so the agreeing to wait until January 15th, whether that's at MLB's request, nobody's ever reported that MLB requested he wait until January 15th. He gets more money if he waits till January 15th. So an extra couple $1,000,000 to wait 30 days. I think he decided that was going to be a good deal.
Yeah, I think so. And I think maybe JDS Third is probably, when he's saying technically Roki can sign now, my assumption is maybe he meant the 2024 international signing period, which, yes, as you mentioned, has now closed since as we're recording this on December 15th. But yeah, Sasaki certainly could have been posted. He was posted in time to sign during the last signing period. I think he borrowed your tinfoil hat that you had on with with Anthony the other night.
Yeah. Hey, they're just trying to make everybody believe it's not a done deal. I am Donovan says, every day you keep risking Mookie's health and extra wear by keeping him at short. All that risk to keep that trash can at second. Again, hey, be anti-Gavin Lux if you want. David says, Devin Williams, 23.14 postseason ERA. Seriously, LOL. So there you go. Postseason, look, small sample size, whatever. And we've had debates on our show about guys who had poor postseason performance and whether or not they should have been trusted or not. And some of those takes aged. What's the opposite of like fine wine? That's what some of those takes aged as. So I never buy into like very, very small sample sizes in the postseason. So if Devin Williams was on my team, I would not look at his 23.14 postseason ERA and say, I don't trust him here. That would be my thing. So there you go. Okay. Super chat here from Steven. With all due respect to everyone, Jeff and Matt stand out as the best. We appreciate it. We have a great team, and it's a lot of different flavors for you, which is what I like. So Scott, Blake, Anthony, Daniel, Matt, it's an awesome team to be a part of. So Steven, we appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the kind words. And thank you. Thank you to everybody that's watching. Again, for a Sunday night, 2,200 people on YouTube, on Twitter. Awesome stuff. We appreciate you guys joining us. And again, we appreciate the super chat. Steven, let's get to one more topic here, Matt. Kind of a fun one. Let's talk Freddie Freeman's Game 1 World Series Grand Slam home run ball selling for, wait for it, $1.56 million is what it sold for. Shout out to the 10-year-old who caught the ball and who now will be able to pay for college in a few years. It is the third most expensive baseball, Matt, ever. Ohtani's 50-50 ball, which sold for $4.4 million. Mark McGwire's 70th home run back in 1998 sold for $3.05 million. And then you've got Freddie Freeman's $1.56 million ball, which just eclipsed the $1.5 million ball, which was Aaron Judge's 62nd home run back in 2022. This is an incredible piece of baseball history, especially if you are a Dodger fan. So I'm not surprised that this ball went for this number. I'll throw this angle at you. And we talked about it on our show. I would rather have this ball than Shohei's 50-50 ball. So the fact that, and I know Shohei Ohtani comes with a whole bunch of other stuff. He's going to be the greatest player of all time, most likely. He's famous internationally in a way that Freddie Freeman is not. All this stuff I get to be true. I'm just telling you, if I had millions of dollars to spend on baseballs, this would be the baseball that I wanted in my collection. There would not be another one that would top it. I would want Freddie Freeman's Game 1 World Series Grand Slam ball.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a couple interesting layers to this is the bidding on Freddie Freeman's Grand Slam ball was relatively low until I think the final hour and a half. And then there was some back and forth. And so they extended it, I think, an extra 2.5 hours past the original deadline, because I don't know if it was two bidders going back and forth or just multiple bidders. So that ended up raising the price to what it ended up being. The other interesting part, in my opinion, to this is that ball is not authenticated.
Yeah.
But the S&P auctions, like they've asserted that, looking at video, like there was clear evidence right away that that kid had it. So like there was that proof. It has the scuff, the World Series. Like there were, telltale signs that it is the home run ball. But
Yeah.
typically, whenever we get to these auctions, it's something that needs to be authenticated and stuff like that. And so this isn't that. And so good for the kid that it still got up to this price. I agree with you, and even like we discussed it against the Shohei Ohtani 50-50 ball, right? But now that we're doing this with the information of where Freeman's checked in, I mean, it's easily it's easily better than Judge's. And I mean, sure, call us bias, I guess, right? It's better than the 60-second home run ball that set the American League record. Mark McGwire's, I think, is pretty cool. I think I might have like a more sentimental view of that one just because I was younger. Like, in my
I was just going to say
years.
the age you are will inform how valuable each of these things really is, right?
Yeah. So I think like I would put McGwire's ahead of Judge's probably because of that.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I would almost maybe put McGwire second instead of Ohtani's, but the logic side, I think, would ultimately weigh in and say, hey, like that's a 50-50. Like probably, I don't want to say never going to be done again, but maybe in our lifetime might not happen again. And so that would be an interesting list to kind of put together.
Yeah, because the Ohtani thing is interesting in that we will always remember that Ohtani went 50-50. Like right now, can you picture the home run in your head? Can you play the video clip in your head? I have a terrible memory, so I can't. But like, I'll never forget the Freddie Freeman thing. Like, I'll just never forget it, And so that's part of it, too, in just the memorable nature of it, all of it. So we're biased on that. There is one other baseball that I did want to talk about, and this one made some news, some positive, some not. Oh, actually, let me say one more thing on the Freddie Freeman thing. I joked about this. So the family who sold it, they put out a statement afterwards and said, our family hopes the baseball will be displayed in Dodger Stadium so all Dodger and baseball fans can view a very special piece of history for the city of Los Angeles. With all due respect, to quote my friend Daniel Starkin, when you sell a baseball for $1.54 million, you don't get to then say, by the way, here's what I would like you to do with this baseball now that you've paid $1.5 million for it. Like, again, 1.56, excuse me. Like, look, I understand the sentiment. That's a crazy statement to put out after you've sold it, my opinion.
Maybe they're hoping that whoever bought it, which the identity still is not known, or at least not public, whoever bought that baseball maybe goes to the Dodgers and says, hey, you guys want to buy this off of me to display it? Like maybe that type of thing can work out. I don't know.
Or store it, basically like you guys hold on to it. We own it, but you can hold it at Dodger Stadium, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, your sentiment, I can like, if I paid $1.5 million for a baseball, I'm probably not necessarily listening to what you sold it to me. I'm probably not really listening to what you want me to do with it. It would be up here on my shelf for this show.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, look, like if you want to lend it to the Hall of Fame or lend it to the Dodgers, knock yourself out. I wouldn't be giving people thoughts. Okay, the other baseball that was sold was the ball that Aaron Judge dropped in Game 5 of the World Series. This one did not sell for a number that ends in millions. This ball sold for $43,510. This was sold by the Dodgers. Directly, the Dodgers sold this to benefit the LA Dodgers Foundation. This is hilarious to me. And like, I would never spend, I don't have $43,000 to spend on a ball. But like, let's just say I had a disposable income that wasn't in the millions, but I had it in the tens of thousands. This would be a hilarious piece of baseball history to own, because holy crap, would the stories that you could get out of this ball be great. Like, I just think it's awesome. That number is approachable. That's the first time I've ever seen an awesome piece of baseball history that I'm like, look, I could never afford that, but like, that's a car. We're not talking about like 4 houses. That's a car.
I'm shocked that it got up to that price.
Really?
I don't really see value
so funny.
in it. Like, if it was a baseball bat, like if it was Freddie Freeman's baseball bat from his Grand Slam, if it was a baseball bat that was used by one of the Dodgers during the World Series, like that I could see, but a drop ball, like a little awkward. And I know more than it. Look, I'm glad that it did get up that high just to, benefit the Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation, who does a ton of great work. They're great with us. And, granting access to their different events and all that. Like they do a great job in the community. So I'm glad for them. I still don't see it like okay. I mean, it's a little strange. But yeah, it's kind of. I think we also need to not clarify, but add in that the Dodgers auction that as part of MLB's. They can't like every team auctioned a bunch of stuff during the winter meetings to help raise funds and stuff like that. So it wasn't necessarily just the Dodgers going off on their own saying, "Hey, we're deciding to do this." I think the fact that they chose that among other memorabilia to put up along in addition to other items is certainly a fun story. But man, yeah, I don't see how the price got up to that.
Some New York sports radio guy, if you haven't heard this quote, I think the Dodgers showed who they are. They're a bunch of classless pigs. That was his response to the fact that they put up for auction Aaron Judge's dropped baseball. And look, and some people pointed out, hey, it wasn't the Dodgers. It literally was the Dodgers. So like he does have that piece right. A, I think it's really funny. B, they raised money for a good cause. And C, I think it's really funny. So I think this baseball would be hilarious to own. That's all I've got to say.
So with the baseballs we just discussed then.
Yeah.
Ohtani's 50-50, Freeman's grand slam, McGuire's 70th, Judge's 62nd, the AL record, and Judge's drop fly ball. Give me your list of first to fifth of which ones you assuming like money's all equal, like it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like what do you want? What would you want in your collection?
Yeah, if the goal is not like to resale or to like hold on to this, it's like the money's going to disappear and this baseball will like be mine until it just vanishes into dust. Freddie Freeman's grand slam is the single greatest sports moment of my life. Again, born just after 1988, like a month after the World Series. So Freddie Freeman is like number one by a mile. I think to your point, I think McGuire's 70th would probably be second on my list. Because as a kid, the Sosa McGuire thing was awesome. Like peak baseball of the last 35 years, in my opinion. I would probably say, it sounds crazy when the numbers are like this. Like the Shohei 50-50 thing, I am not trying to discount it at all. I just think it would be so funny to have the ball that Aaron Judge dropped in Game 5. It's the game the Dodgers won the World Series. Like, am I crazy for saying I would prefer the dropped ball from Aaron Judge to Shohei's 50-50? I just think like that was Game 5 of the World Series, and it's super funny.
Maybe not crazy. I'm glad you went with that because I was agreeing with your list, and I was like, man, we're not going to end up debating anything. I would flip them. I would do Ohtani's ball 50-50 ball third.
Okay.
The one Judge dropped fourth. His 62nd AL record, I have no desire for that. So I would take it and I would maybe go play catch with it or resell it or something.
Yeah, in case anybody's wondering, Barry Bonds, who cares about that guy? Kick rocks, Barry Bonds. I want nothing to do with any of the baseballs that you ever hit. So there you go. Yeah, that's what I got. So, okay, let's shift gears here. We do have a super chat to get to. 300 says, I'm curious how the Dodgers got the ball. The game was in New York. I imagine eventually this ball just made its way into the Dodgers dugout or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. Why it went to their dugout instead of maybe the Yankees dugout maybe was, I don't know, luck or maybe it did go to the Yankees dugout and it was just authenticated and stored, and then the Yankees and Dodgers both had access to kind of the same sort of memorabilia in that regard. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know how all that went.
Yeah, look, if you're trying to raise money, I guarantee you this is going to make more money at a Dodgers auction than it was at a Yankees auction. So
definitely, yeah.
For what it's worth, Aaron Judge might have just paid the money to make sure that this news, the headline never happens. So, I mean, that's one thing. Look, $40,000 to Aaron Judge, he could have just paid that number and gone and, put a stick of dynamite in this thing, and he'd never have to hear about it ever again for the rest of his life.
Maybe he got outbid. Maybe he tried, but he drew like Andrew Friedman. He has his line in the sand that he's not going to go past.
I do see some people asking about my comments about Barry Bonds, but being pro Mark McGuire's baseball. Look, I know Mark McGuire cheated, and I probably should feel way differently about Mark McGuire than I actually do. As Matt and I mentioned during our childhood, that was awesome. We found out like kind of way after the fact that those guys were definitely cheating. And also Barry Bonds was a giant and didn't seem like that nice of a guy. So add all those things into a pot, and that's why I feel way better about Mark McGuire than Barry Bonds. I'm not saying it's logical or rational, just where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. I think that's going to do our content for tonight. So let's get to some questions. All caps questions. Throw that in the chat. And I did promise the 4 of you who care, Matt and I we had a Red Robin conversation that we want to get to. So we'll save that to the end. I know people are just chomping at the bit to hear us talk about Red Robin. But if you've got any questions, all caps questions, throw it in the chat. Ederico says, what's the outfield lineup if both Teo and Kike don't re-sign? And why should Matthew Moreno be one of those outfielders? So there you go. Are you interested in playing left field? Could you play as good of a left field as Teoscar Hernandez, Matt?
I think I probably could. I've said before I was a shortstop pitcher growing up, so I think I have the arm to be able to do it. I would need to train it a little bit so I don't throw out my rotator cuff with my first time trying to throw out Stanton at home plate. But in all seriousness, yeah, I mean the outfield is certainly. I think I get the question Enrico was asking about Teoscar and Kike Hernandez. I know Jeff and I are in agreement that Kike is very likely to be back regardless of what happens with Teoscar. I think if Teoscar isn't back, then it makes it even more likely that Kike would be re-signed. But if for some reason the Dodgers don't have either of them, then yeah, it starts to get a little bit dicey. Probably looking at the trade market. I think Conforto takes on maybe a larger role than maybe the Dodgers are anticipating right now. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, we're not at that point yet because both of those guys are still free agents and they could easily be back with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I'm with you. Pages, Conforto, James Outman's in the mix. I'm not saying I think he's going to be a break glass in case of emergency type of a guy, but he's in the mix unless he busts out at spring training and they feel way better about him. Chris Taylor, Tommy Edman, obviously the other name I haven't mentioned. So you could field Pages, Conforto, and Tommy Edman, and it wouldn't be the worst thing like that the Dodgers have ever done. I'll just leave it at that. I think the nice thing is the Dodgers are on one hand desperate for Teoscar Hernandez because he's way better than the alternatives. And at least the flip side is they have alternatives. Like if Andy Pages playing every day is the alternative, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not saying it's great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Zenji says, is there any obvious player that we should go after if Teo walks? Any names jump to mind for you, Matt?
I mean, I think maybe Seiya Suzuki, just because it's been reported that the Cubs are looking to trade him. I think some of that stems from they made him a DH and he wants to get back to playing the outfield, which, hey, no problem there if you're going to be playing on the Dodgers because the DH role is solidified for the next 9 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Santander, but I don't know if the Dodgers would be willing to pay. I don't know if he would take maybe the type of contract, because I feel like I do think that maybe the Dodgers would extend themselves a little bit more financially for Teoscar Hernandez than they would for any of the other outfielders available in free agency, right? Like to your point, You had him on your team, you know what he's like, you know how he fits with the clubhouse, stuff like that. So I think they value that and would be willing to, if it's 2 million, 5 million, 10, whatever it is, like spend a little bit more in that regard than maybe they would for somebody like an external free agent that they're then bringing in.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a free agent would be my answer. I think you would probably start scouring like who's available via trade. I think if Teoscar isn't the guy that you end up signing, or again, like I don't think it's a 0% chance that they would just try and figure out what they have internally. We've got another question here from Dixon saying thoughts on Dalton Rushing and Alex Freeland making the 40-man roster. I mean, on one hand, the 40-man roster is pretty full, and until they can put guys on the 60-day IL, they're not going to have room for it. I don't think Alex Freeland is a guy that they're going to be actively trying to move up to the 40-man roster until they desperately need to. But Dalton Rushing is a guy who could play the corner outfield by all accounts. I don't think they would want to be trusting him to play the corner outfield on opening day. But if we're talking about the All-Star break, I think Dalton Rushing could be in the mix there. And if you sign Conforto and you sign Teoscar Hernandez and you've got Tommy Edman in center, that doesn't exactly open up a ton of playing time when guys are healthy, especially with Andy Pages, maybe Chris Taylor, maybe Kike Hernandez in the mix out there as well. So I think Rushing's going to be in that mix, which is why I say if Teoscar doesn't sign, Matt, would it be the craziest thing in the world to you to have Edman in center, Conforto in one corner, Pages in one corner, with Taylor, Kike Hernandez, Dalton Rushing, James Outman as kind of the guys circling in behind them for depth? I'm not saying it's like a good thing. I'm just saying I don't know if they would feel like, oh my gosh, we have to make a move outside of Teoscar if he goes somewhere else.
I think they would from the standpoint of they would need to find a right-handed bat.
Yeah.
Just because the lineup is left-handed heavy. So maybe at that point they make the Nolan Arenado trade that everybody wants.
Yeah. Oh gosh, no, please don't say that. Don't say that. You don't even mean that. This is a funny one. Larry says, do you think the Padres include their game-ending triple play against us in their team highlight packages? If so, how sad? Is it before or after their NLDS victory over the Dodgers, do you think? Do you think it comes right before that? Or the NLDS is probably the climax of their video, right?
Probably. I mean, I guess I don't know. Are we talking highlight package like for the 2025 season?
Just the whole franchise history.
Oh, yeah, it's before then. The NLDS. The NLDS, well, the NLDS actually wouldn't be the last thing I would say. I would say the last thing is going to be their big parade that they had throughout Gaslamp after winning the wild card series. Because when you win a wild card series,
that's what I meant.
Basically, wild card series and the World Series are basically the same thing. So
yeah,
you got to throw a big parade. Yeah,
they both start with W. It's not a coincidence if you ask me. This one's great. Mr. Azkova 25. How worried should I be if SI is reporting Teoscar is going to the Reds? 0% worried. Bleacher Report, I think, was the first one that came out with this, and they basically got openly mocked in every corner. Now, if Teoscar signs with the Reds, like Bleacher Report is going to have the victory lap of all victory laps. However, highly unlikely. Like if we did 55% is what I have the Dodgers for Teoscar, the Reds are sub 1%. Sub 1%, the Reds going after Teoscar.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things. I'm assuming this question is asking. SI probably took that tweet, the prediction from Bleacher Report, whatever one of their writers did it, and basically aggregated and put an article together. I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I am seeing some
safe
negative comments.
By the way. Safe assumption.
I am seeing some negative comments about Sports Illustrated that I do want to push back on a little bit because Tom Verducci is there. I think Stephanie Epstein, another one of their MLB writers, is there, and Pat Forty, I think, covers college football for them. Like, there are a ton of still distinguished, really good writers at Sports Illustrated that deserve our respect and are different from some of the fan stuff and clickbait that Sports Illustrated has fallen into. But I think we just need to. There's journalism in general gets, I think, unfairly painted sometimes in this climate, and it's important to remember that there is still good work being done by a lot of people out there.
It's true. And to your point, not all Sports Illustrated articles are created equal, but some of them are clickbait, and the one you're referring to probably was. Okay, Richard says, who's not on the opening day roster? Teo, Chris Taylor, Ferris. I
think he's saying Bueller.
Bueller, yeah, okay. Okay. I was like, yeah. Kike, why does Blake hate the players I like and like the players I hate? I'll answer the second question because this is the easiest thing. Blake, if people like something, Blake's not allowed to like that thing. So that's just like the simplest version of the second piece. As far as the first piece, who's not on the opening day roster? If we were to rank these, I would say I am most confident that Kike Hernandez is on the opening day roster. Mm-hmm. I am second most confident. Bueller would be last on the list. Teoscar versus Chris Taylor for me is the tricky one. Because Chris Taylor, I think, is like, I'll say Taylor second most likely, not because I want it. I think there's a chance he's gone, but he's already there. It's harder for me to put the guy who's on the roster below the guy who's not. So there you go.
Fair. I would flip it. I think I have Teoscar and Taylor flipped.
Okay, so you would say Kike 1, Teoscar 2, Taylor 3, Bueller 4.
Yes. Well, okay. I guess, but we also did the opposite of what he asked us to do. So I guess
who's not on opening day? We would say Bueller least likely to be on the opening day.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, our apologies, Richard.
Any input on why Blake hates the players that he likes and likes the players he hates?
I was just going to say Blake hates fun.
Yeah, it's true.
Leave it at that.
There you go. Other than Disneyland, he hates fun.
Well, is Disneyland fun?
Look, hey, you're the guy who has the pass, all right? I was trying to be nice here.
Sure.
I have my own thoughts. on Disneyland, but I'm going to keep them to myself because I sense that it's probably not a popular opinion. Alia says, besides rushing, any other debuts that we should keep a lookout for? I think there's a couple. On the pitching side, Jackson Ferris is a guy that they got from the Cubs who's probably the team's best pitching prospect. So that's one. Nick Frasso was the team's best pitching prospect a year ago before he got hurt. Keep an eye out for him. Kyle Hurt has already come up, right? He was up for like one inning or 2 innings or something like that.
A few appearances, and then he got hurt. Yeah.
Okay. So he'd be another guy, but I guess that doesn't technically qualify. Alex Freeland, who was mentioned, is a shortstop prospect. I could see a world where he might make his debut at some point. Those are the guys that jump out to me. Is anybody else that the Dodgers top guys like Zaire Hope, Josue DePaula, those guys are like a long, long way away, 2 or 3 years at minimum. So aside from rushing, a lot of the top guys are a couple years away.
Yeah, I think right now we're looking at a pitching heavy list for guys that would be making their debuts in 2025.
Yeah, and again, which is interesting because if you look at the top rated Dodgers prospects, they're all going to be offensive guys. It's just that they're a little further away from the big leagues. I was just trying to see. Like Joendry Vargas is another guy who's highly rated, but like he's 19 or 20 years old or something like that. So, I don't think Cartaya is going to be making his debut. He's on the 40-man. He formerly was a top prospect, but I wouldn't expect that. Not when they already have 4 catchers on the 40-man roster and Dalton Rushing will be added ahead of him. Steven with another super chat. If money were no concern, which Dodgers World Series memorabilia that is currently available would you want for Christmas? If money were no concern,
are we talking like the Freddie Freeman Grand Slam, like the Grand Slam ball? Like, does that fall into it? Like,
I would say not that level of reasonable. Okay. I was gifted. I'll say this: like, I was gifted after the 2020 World Series a Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger signed baseball, which is kind of a cool one because
that's cool.
Those two guys, as far as 2020 goes, were heavily instrumental. I'm not saying they were Corey Seager, but that's cool. So for me, if I could, the dream scenario would be some sort of signed ball that included Freddie Freeman and Walker Buehler, because those are the 2 guys that I'm going to remember. The other one that I've looked at, but not seriously because I can't afford it, is like a picture. So I just bought, you can kind of see it behind me, the new edition. This is the Daily News, not the LA Times, which there's a whole story behind that, but the Daily News after Game 1 of the World Series with the Freddie Freeman pose. So the picture of Freddie Freeman posing signed by him, I think would be dope. So Walker Buehler, Freddie Freeman signed baseball, Freddie Freeman signed Game 1 picture, I think would be, or like a Walker Buehler Game 5 signed picture. Those types of things I think would be my dream.
I would go Walker Buehler's Game 5 jersey autographed framed.
There you go. Well, look at that. Me and Blake and I agreeing. Blake says Freddie Freeman signed photo from the Grand Slam. So there you go. Blake and I, sometimes that's a thing.
Every now and then it happens.
Yeah. Nobody tell Blake that everybody else likes that idea. I was expecting, what was I expecting from Blake on like his favorite? I'm trying to think of, I don't know. Joey Gallo's not on the team anymore. Yeah, great question, though, Steven. And again, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Ella Shiva says, will Dave Roberts' extension be 5 years, 5 more years, or less? I would guess less.
I think 5 on the dot.
Okay, there we go. I'll say 4, just for the sake of being slightly different. It just feels like they give this guy short extensions and everybody figures it out. Broman Dude says, is Dave Roberts now a guaranteed future Hall of Famer? I hesitate to say guaranteed because I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where he's literally the greatest winning percentage of any major league manager in history over a certain number of games. He now has 2 World Series to his name on top of that. I don't know what case you could make that he's not one of the best managers of all time with those 2 pieces of information.
Yeah, I'll say it. It's guaranteed.
He'll say guaranteed. Says, how do you see Ohtani this season? When will he be ready? Fingers crossed. If something happens during pitching, he will probably be out of the lineup. So he did have non-pitching shoulder surgery this offseason, which means he will not be ready to pitch by opening day. But I believe, Matt, the expectation is that from a hitting perspective, he'll be ready by opening day. Is that right?
Yes, that is what the Dodgers believe will be the case. So unfortunately, not pitching in the Tokyo series, but still should be in the lineup for opening day and kind of playing the way he did this past season, where he was starting as the DH. he will start pitching at some point this year. The Dodgers haven't outlined everything yet in that regard. I think they're going to kind of wait and see. He will be on an innings limit, and it seems like one thing that they want to avoid is having him pitching in games and then shutting him down at some point during the year to then have him pitch again. So it looks like they would be a delayed start in terms of a pitcher. That way he can stay on the mound the rest of the way through.
Broman also says, will Ohtani win a Cy Young in the next 5 years?
I think so.
5 years. I mean, come on. Yeah, sure. A Cy Young MVP. He gets the double. Although it'll be for both. He'll be the best hitter and the best pitcher at one point in the next 5 years. How about that? All right. Let's get to some fun questions. Again, thank you to all the people, 2,500 people here on Twitter, on YouTube. Ella Shiva is going to get us started with the food question. I have a hot take, so I'm going to let you answer this first. For Christmas desserts, do you prefer frosted Christmas cookies or gingerbread cookies?
Definitely not gingerbread. I know I shared this the last time you, Blake, and myself were on a show. Blake was generous and kind enough to drop off some seasonal Disneyland desserts to my wife and I. One of them that was a big deal amongst Blake and his Disney buddies is the gingerbread cookie that I thought
the Mickey Mouse fan club.
Yeah, that I thought was just awful. So I'm gonna have to write them a stern letter on how wrong their taste buds are. So not gingerbread, frosted. I don't necessarily think I do frosted either. My wife makes sugar cookies, chocolate chip cookies, and the Mexican like wedding cookies, the white ones. So that's typically what I'll have a little bit of during Christmas and into the new year.
Yeah, I'm not a frosting guy and I'm not a gingerbread guy. So I'm 0 for 2 on these. Not interested in either of these things. If there's still leftover apple pie from Thanksgiving, I'll just take that. A few weeks old, that's fine. Throw that bad boy in the oven. Scoop of vanilla ice cream. Sign me up. I had brownies and ice cream, Matt. A good brownie and vanilla ice cream is like an elite dessert combination as far as I'm concerned, Matt. That's all I'm going to say. Brownies and vanilla.
I could see it.
Okay, Red Robin. This is a conversation that we had offline. Red Robin is not the finest culinary institution in the history of the world. I want to make that abundantly clear. However, when you live in a town with limited food options, as I do, and have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old, as I do, as well as a wife who has tons of food allergies, which makes the number of places that you can go to limited, as I also do, Red Robin is a favorite of the Spiegel family up here. And I suggested to you that my my favorite Red Robin burger is called the Royal Red Robin, which is a bacon cheeseburger with an egg on top. And it's fantastic. It's like one of my favorite burgers ever. Egg on top of burger. I'm in every step of the way. You said you've never tried it, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like steak and eggs, that type of like, I haven't done like eggs with some sort of protein in that regard, other than like bacon, excluding that. I'm not sure if I would ever really bring myself to doing it just because I don't know if I care enough to try it.
Try the Royal Red Robin. It'll change your life.
All right. Maybe I
mean, it's probably like $18 at this point, but it's delicious. Worst case scenario, you just take the egg off. I think it has mayo on there. I don't think you're a mayo guy, right?
No, yeah, I don't like mayo.
But the Royal Red Robin. That's all I'm going to say, Matt. I think you're going to like it. My other Red Robin take is Elite Ranch dressing and unlimited fries. Like, I mean, just the all in on Red Robin. I like Red Robin. So there you go.
I agree. I do think the burger that I used to get a burger that they served on like an onion bun that I don't think they have anymore. So that's kind of disappointment. I think Red Robin went through a phase where once they got rid of the plastic baskets and switched to like the plates and tried to get a little bit fancier.
Yeah.
There's been a little bit of a decline in their food. And I kind of thought like, you guys don't need to do this. Like we were coming here for the baskets. We know what we're getting. It was consistent. So it was fine. I told you, like, I think honestly, their fries aside, because the endless bottomless fries are certainly great.
Yeah.
Their chicken wrap, Whiskey River barbecue chicken wrap, I think it's called. I think that is one of their better things on the menu. And they're known for burgers.
Yeah. Blake said the chicken teriyaki sandwich. And I'm like, the Red Robin people can't be happy that two of the favorite things on the item are chicken items. And I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just funny.
Yeah, so I think that wrap is very good. I think Red Robin at some point needs to go back to just bringing the food in baskets because that was when they were at their peak.
Yeah, I mean, my go-to is basically the smallest burger that they have on the non-kids menu. It's called like the Tavern Double, and it's like $10, I think. But I'm like, give me the Tavern Double. It's basically like a slightly bigger McDouble from McDonald's, but then I'm crushing 12 baskets of fries at some point over the course of the next couple of hours. So it's like I don't need a half-pound burger. Just give me you get enough of the burger for taste, and then I'm gonna just slather my seasoned Red Robin fries and ranch dressing and have a good one. So that's what I
But
got.
see, that's why I'll get the chicken wrap, because it's balanced. That's eating good, and then I can allow myself to eat a bunch of fries, and then everything evens out. So then I don't come away feeling too guilty.
Okay, this is a great question. SK says Red Robin or Islands? You're not an Islands guy.
I am. I like Islands. I think has really good chicken tortilla soup.
Chicken tortilla soup, fantastic at Islands. I agree with you. I think we've had this conversation. I don't order soup from anywhere. Islands is like the lone exception.
I think because of the reasons I just outlined of Red Robin, in my opinion, going on a decline after switching from baskets to plates, chicken tortilla soup with cheddar fries at Islands, very good. And their ranch is also good. It's not Red Robin good, but it is very good. So I think
you can get the soup, you can get bottomless also, right?
Yes, you can.
The large bowls.
Yeah, that's how I have finished like one there, and then they let me take one home. I've never had like one plus at the restaurant, just because it ends up being a lot.
So I don't live in Southern California anymore. Haven't been to Islands in a long time, so it's hard to say. I'm going to go Islands because I think Red Robin's in a slightly different tier. I'll just put it that way. And I like Red Robin. I'm pro Red Robin. So there we go. Let's see. Ella Shiva wants to know eggnog with rum or no rum. I'll just take the rum by itself, please. No eggnog. Don't just keep the eggnog as far away from me as possible. And you could just pour me a glass of rum and I'll take my chances there. That's my answer.
Right, well, send me your eggnog then.
Oh gosh. You like eggnog?
In like little spurts. Like I'll have like a sip of it over like a period of 2 weeks around this time, and then I'm good. I won't necessarily have like glasses of it at a time.
See, this is my theory. If something is only good one time of year in short spurts, it means it isn't good. Like if you're like, no, I just want a little for a couple weeks a year, give me a little. It's not good. If it was good, and Scott, like I think we joked about pumpkin spice lattes, and Scott was like, I'll take pumpkin spice all year round. More power to you, but I'm out. No thanks to eggnog for me. Blake said ordering soup from a restaurant, by the way, should be a federal crime. And look, I said it. I don't order soup from anywhere. 1, 2, Blake's food opinions are Blake's food opinions.
I think, yeah, as we answer these final few questions, we can ask the chat, what is worse, going to a restaurant and ordering soup or going to a steakhouse and ordering chicken?
Yeah.
We won't tell you which. We won't tell you
going
which
to a pancake place.
We won't tell you which side of the coin Blake is on, but you guys let us know which of those two is worse.
Also, Blake says no one eats apple pie except at holidays. Well, there's lots of holidays. Holidays are year round, and also I eat apple pie all year round. There we go, like the McRib. Yeah, there you go. No thoughts on the McRib. Jason says, food question. What's your guilty pleasure? I'm a restaurant owner. I should never admit I love bologna and cheese whiz. Holy smokes. On white wondering bread. So there you go. Mine is not going to be bologna and cheese whiz, but more power to you, Jason. Wonder Bread's great. I got no issue with Wonder Bread. Do you have an answer to this one, Matt?
My guilty pleasure is probably McDonald's. Just like late night, because especially with our schedule, like if I'm at the stadium late or if I'm working from home and it gets late, like they typically are always open and they're around. Interesting. Jason's sandwich sounds similar to like lunches I had growing up. Not cheese whiz. I had like a slice of American cheese. Cheese. Every now and then I'll crave that type of sandwich from back in the day. It's kind of weird.
Well, I made a breakfast sandwich this morning and threw American cheese on it. And look, I mean, American cheese, we all know it's processed. We all know all that stuff. I'm just saying there's a time and a place where American cheese just hits the spot. Chicken nuggets would probably be mine. Like I make dino nuggets for my kids and I'm like, just throw 5 or 6 extra bad boys on the side there for myself. So I love chicken nuggets, chicken tenders. I'm all in on that. All right. Last question here. We'll go out with the Dodgers question. Viralocity says, what is going on with renovations at Dodger Stadium? Do we have any insight? We got a little from Friedman a couple weeks ago, but have we heard anything new?
Yeah, so it's basically the clubhouses, the weight rooms, the training rooms, like that type of stuff that's being renovated, upgraded, however you want to kind of describe it. yeah, I mean, if you've seen, we did post some of the pictures when we were at the stadium for Blake Snell's press conference. There's a ton of dirt all over the field. There's big holes on the side, like basically the dugout, or not the baseline clubs down the third base and first base line of the stadium. So yeah, it's certainly a lot. And Andrew Friedman, and actually Dave Roberts did say at the winter meetings that he's hopeful that it'll be done in time for the season. He said he did know that the construction crews are basically working, around the clock, late at night, and stuff like that to get it done. So they're excited to see it done, but I think there's a little bit of nervousness on whether or not it'll be completed. I mean, it has to be completed to a certain degree, right? So maybe just like the finer details that the players would get to sort of utilize won't be complete maybe until they come back from like their first road trip or something.
Hepatitis says there's also a Nestor Cortez statue that's going to be going up as well. I mean, that would be a good one. Like the Freddie Freeman Game 1 World Series, like that feels like it's tailor-made to be on to be part of a statue at some point, right?
Well, does he get a statue?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to ask if Freddie Freeman does, but I'm just talking from a moment perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying it would happen. Let me rephrase. I could see that picture immortalized perfectly in statue form, and everybody would look at it and know exactly what it looks like, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Whether or not it happens, the Dodgers are not, just handing out statues. So the Lakers might be handing out statues, but the Dodgers are not. So a mural, there you go. Maybe it's more of a mural on the side of a building, although it deserves better than Joe Kelly's pouty face. I mean, we need to go somewhere between pouty face and statue. So however we get there.
Well, hey, I mean, they will need to figure out there. Joe Kelly does have his mariachi mural on the reserve level at Dodger Stadium, which if he's not back with the team, I don't know, like that might need to be updated. I know Jonas never painted it. Blake is saying replace it. Jonas has done a ton of work for the Dodgers, for the Lakers as well. He's done Kobe things at Grand Central Market in LA. So I'm sure they would have him maybe update it with something new. And maybe that's where maybe they do a Freeman mural at that point.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody. That'll do it for us tonight. That is Matthew Moreno. I am Jeff Spiegel. As always, thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday night here. I will be back on Tuesday night with Anthony Witrato. Thursday night, Blake and Scott will be with you every single week. So make sure to check that stuff out. We've got new content that'll be coming out throughout the week in the morning. So if you're not already, please subscribe and ring the notification bell right here on the Dodger Blue 1958 page. You can check out writing stuff from Scott, from Blake, from Matt, from others over at DodgerBlue.com. And of course on social media, Dodger Blue 1958. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. And as always, go Dodgers. Still champs!